2025 in WWE began looking like it could be generational. A stacked roster, young international stars, huge stars returning, and a chance to move on from a bloodline-heavy saga and war. Everyone expected a year full of long-term storytelling, interesting character arcs, and satisfying payoffs. And the kind of cohesive booking that defined Triple H in his early tenure, and especially in NXT. Not to mention, expectations were also high after the Raw on Netflix debut, where it felt like WWE were going to show out for their huge new partnership. A chance to write cinema amidst John Cena's final year. To paraphrase Big Smoke, all you had to do was follow the damn train, Triple H. Instead, WWE delivered one of the most inconsistent, frustrating, momentum-killing years in recent memory. Some booking mistakes were small, and some were catastrophic. Some were just insulting, but all of them contributed to a year that felt like WWE couldn't figure out what story it wanted to tell. And even in the few glimmering moments, it would quickly be squandered by a boring, repetitive weekly product. The Royal Rumble is usually the most exciting night of the year because it's an unpredictable reset for the entire company, and a chance to set the tone for the road to WrestleMania and sometimes the entire year. Instead, 2025 delivered one of the most baffling sets of decisions WWE has ever produced. Charlotte Flair won the Women's Rumble again. Now, I will go ahead and say this, Charlotte Flair's arc in 2025 has made her progressively more and more likable. But that's mainly in the latter half, because everything she's done with Alexa Bliss has been endearing and enjoyable. But winning the Rumble, nobody asked for this and nobody wanted it. Yes, she came back from a year-long injury, but the division was full of women with momentum who deserved it more. Yet WWE went back to the same well and the status quo. And the poor decisions, well, they didn't stop there because Jey Uso won the Men's Rumble. But he is beloved, charismatic, and over with a large portion of the audience. But even still, him winning the Royal Rumble and later the championship felt incredibly tone deaf.
Jey hanging in there! Jey wins! Jey Uso is going to WrestleMania!
Yes, it was a shocking moment, but everyone was expecting Cena to win his final Rumble, setting up for what at the time seemed like a retirement tour you just couldn't mess up. Jey was once loved damn near universally. People were so gassed when he won the IC title, but WWE went too far and turned a large portion of fans on Jey Uso this year. The revolt only got stronger with the next bad piece of booking when he won the world title from Gunther at WrestleMania.
Gunther's offense around him. Uso's got it locked in on Gunther. Gunther's fading. Gunther taps out. Jey Uso wins the damn title.
A feel-good moment, but terrible booking. Gunther tapping out to Jey is the kind of damage we are still lingering from, in my opinion. Gunther's entire presentation, years of aura built, domination, violence gone in a single match and a single moment. Not from anything super grandiose, but from his own move, which he shouldn't have struggled with in the first place. Especially from Jey Uso, who is not a submission magician. It downgraded Gunther, it made the monster look fragile, and it damaged his entire mystique. And Jey Uso just wasn't ready to carry the world title, and his entire reign exposed that. John Cena's farewell tour should have been the emotional anchor of 2025. It should have been emotional, reflective, full of callbacks to his career, and tied to meaningful rivalries. And maybe most importantly, it should have been building to a grand finale, which had been thought about the second he announced it at Money in the Bank the year before. Instead, WWE turned it into a viral moment, which robbed us of half of his tour. Turning John Cena heel was one of the biggest what-ifs of his entire career. And if it was executed better, you'd maybe be able to say, okay, fair enough. There was no long-term plan, no payoff. The Rock was never showing up to finish the story. Travis Scott was there, but his relationship with WWE crumbled over the summer, leaving John Cena with a directionless, poor excuse of a heel turn. It robbed fans of a final big John Cena WrestleMania entrance. His 17th world title win featured Travis Scott but no Rock, ruining the moment. It also robbed fans of a true final Randy Orton, R-Truth, and CM Punk feud. Cena deserved a celebration of his 2 decades, and instead, we got a series of poor, directionless, inconsistent booking with a lot of Logan Paul. One of the most frustrating story casualties of the entire year was the bizarre and inconsistent handling of R-Truth, a performer who has proven time and time again that he can absolutely get anything over. With money to print and gold in their hands, the Ron Killings heel run should have been sensational.
You think I'm some sideshow act? You think I'm a gimmick?
Oh my God, no.
And WWE somehow still managed to mess it up. He wrestled Cena during the farewell tour at SNME, which could have been a true callback to their underrated 2011 feud, shout out to Capital Punishment. It could have been a fun nostalgia feud and a boost for Truth's credibility, even a launching pad for something serious to mix it up later in the year. Instead, WWE treated it like a novelty act. A cute little, look at R-Truth having a big match, he is goofy and John Cena's his favorite, woohoo, instead of a real story.
Oh! AA delivered!
It had little build, little interaction on the road to the match, and then Cena moved on. And then following up all of those confusing decisions, they let R-Truth go, which resulted in huge backlash. After a ton of uproar from talent and fans alike, he would make a shocking return at Money in the Bank. WWE teased something genuinely intriguing. A serious, grounded version of R-Truth, now known as Ron Killings, trying to be taken seriously again. Not a comedy gimmick, not a confused character, not a nostalgic callback Cena fan, but a man who wanted respect.
So how much did fans play a role in it, or was there something else that made you guys decide, like, you know what, we want this guy still here?
I love the question. You enjoying the show? Whole part of the show, man.
The man literally cut his hair on live television in one of the best and most shocking moments of 2025. They gave us a few great promos that suggested Truth was shedding the goofy persona and showing fans a side of him we hadn't seen since TNA. The whole world was buzzing, people were ready to see Ron Killings. But then the arc was abandoned almost instantly. No huge payoff, no defining match, no rivalry to cement the change. And eventually, no mention of it ever happening.
Personality on Raw gave himself a free haircut.
He spent a while calling out Cena on Smackdown only for Cena to never respond.
I'm driving on my terms. Cena, get out here.
Then he got muddled amidst an Aleister Black feud and eventually it was just dropped altogether. There was no more Ron Killings. He was just R-Truth again.
If you back, I'm back. We back.
Remember you made that kid in Brussels cry? And then you said you wanted to ruin wrestling. I mean, come on, did you really think that would work?
Truth was reduced back to a comedy character again within months. WWE boiled him right back to who he was before. It wasn't just a tone shift, it was total regression of a character that could have been something so special this year. 2025 had the talent to be one of the best years in the history of women's wrestling for WWE, and with certain matches it absolutely delivered. I think about Io Sky versus Rhea Ripley versus Bianca Belair at WrestleMania, for example.
Io Sky over the moonsault, cover on Belair, Sky wins, Io Sky wins.
Io Sky retained in a huge moment but then barely wrestled for months. It just killed her momentum, it killed the title's momentum, and it hurt the division's credibility. Things began to pick up again with Naomi winning Money in the Bank and eventually cashing in successfully to win the Women's Championship.
Off the post, split-legged moonsault, covered by Naomi. Naomi's the world champion. Holy cow!
But she would relinquish the title due to pregnancy, leading to Stephanie Vaquer beating Io in a vacant title match. And it really doesn't help that Bianca Belair has spent most of this year out with a finger injury, because I think if she could have been around, it would have added a lot to the women's world title picture, and it would have added a lot to Stephanie's reign thus far. The Women's women's mid-card titles were introduced with promise but became props. And again, in some aspects, they've had their moments. But not having either new belt be defended at WrestleMania was terrible. Later in the year, Becky Lynch and Lyra Valkyria provided credibility to the IC belt, but the US title on Smackdown was filled with no meaningful programs and more confusing booking. Chelsea Green winning the title was a beloved moment, which eventually had her losing a lot, and then she dropped the belt to Zelina Vega. Zelina Vega's reign wasn't memorable, and Giulia... How much time do we have? This one really still stings. Giulia was one of the most exciting signings in WWE history. A star with legitimate global buzz, and on main, they gave her a stop-stop push, no coherent story, short meaningless matches, C-level opponents like B-Fab and Michin with all due respect, no consistent character direction. This is a generational talent being treated like a lower mid-carder. They didn't have her win the belt on PLE, she didn't defend it on PLE. In my opinion, the only good takeaway from her entire run this year is the partnership with Kiana James, because otherwise, to sound drastic, it's been a damn character assassination. And on a wider scale, a consistent complaint is that the women this year have received so many meaningless stories. Very few character arcs, personal stakes, long-term feuds, and promos that kept repeating the same catchphrases and lines over and over again, like, Tiffy time! The fact you made Tiffany Stratton this boring and repetitive catchphrase drone is baffling in its own right. Women's wrestling in WWE didn't fail because of talent, because they have tons and tons of it. It failed because the booking forgot to treat it seriously. And speaking of the booking, lazy booking has become a consistent aspect of WWE in 2025. Rematch after rematch, storylines that didn't resolve or don't evolve, matches built with no promos, stories built with no matches, segments that repeated themselves week after week. I mean, damn near every episode of Raw since WrestleMania has involved the same tired rotation of stars or angles. Very rarely has it strayed away from the Vision opening Monday Night Raw with the same promo, or the Vision dominating Raw with the same ending, or occasionally any combination of LA Knight, Jey Uso, Roman Reigns, or CM Punk getting the upper hand on the Vision, which was really the same thing anyway, since Raw frequently ended with a brawl or DQ in the same manner. And look, WWE's obsession with starting this wrestling show with people yapping has to stop, especially when the promos are so damn formulaic that you know what they're gonna say anyway. Because every time I turn on Raw to see yap as people walk into the building, yap to open the first segment, I truly understand why people call WWE a parody of pro wrestling. It is. Roman Reigns of himself has been the victim of lazy booking in appearances too. Sure, he's put over Bronson Reed this year, which was a huge W.
Reed, breaker, God, shield.
But realistically, for a while, he's been in the same pattern of return, promo, Vision, match, get written off for a month or a few, and then come back and do the same thing. Even Rollins versus Punk, which should have been a generational feud given their years of genuine heat, it felt like it went from being a masterpiece on the Netflix debut to something that I never ever want to see again. Cody Rhodes, arguably the most naturally over babyface of the decade, got a second world title reign that has felt shockingly underwhelming. His booking amidst his Drew McIntyre feud could have been far more compelling. His Aleister Black feud could be interesting, but instead it's led him to War Games rather than defending the belt, and Aleister is in the cold again. He's had predictable matches, little meaningful character growth, and even in some aspects confusing character growth, like when he won dirty against Drew McIntyre. Much like CM Punk, he's now stuck in a stale heroic babyface routine, one where both world champions have little depth and rinse and repeat the same shtick over and over again. Cody deserved a story with depth, like the Randy Orton feud, which has still yet to have a payoff. Sure, it might happen at WrestleMania, but that story has been hinted at for an eternity. One week, SmackDown can feel like the A show again, and then the next, it's a collection of filler segments and a completely missable episode. There's no consistent tone or vibe, no sense of direction, and an unbelievable lack of brand split. SmackDown is a small example of WWE's big problem. You're rich with talent, but poor with stories. And finally, War Games. It used to be a highlight of the year, but 2025's version has felt mostly flat. There's no emotional glue, various missed story beats and inconsistencies, and damn near the same people in the match again. Over on Smackdown, WWE actually had gold on their hands with the tag division. For a minute there, everyone was cooking, and it culminated in a huge TLC match, which for some reason was left off WrestleMania. But then they had the Wyatt 6 return, and the entire tag division just stopped being interesting. Instead, they all turned their attention to the Wyatts and forgot to be individuals, resulting in boring TV. Over on Monday nights, Finn and JD won the belts only to not defend them for months and months, and then they lost them to the makeshift team of AJ Styles and Dragon Lee.
Am I the only one who remembers on Monday Night Raw when he was all like, someone here doesn't want me to succeed, and then we just, like, moved on?
One of the most heartbreaking creative abandonments of the entire year was the Bloodline hunter Drew McIntyre. This is one that technically carried over from late 2024, where Drew was positioned perfectly. He was motivated, angry, betrayed, violent with a personal vendetta, and years of Bloodline interferences to get his payback. It should have been one of the easiest long-term storylines WWE could have told. A little bit like Kraven the Hunter, Drew McIntyre hunts down each member of the Bloodline one by one until he finally reaches the head of the table at WrestleMania. But unfortunately, WWE dropped it with no explanation, no pivot, no new direction, just silence. And what did Drew get instead? A character with no true identity. Nowadays, he just feels a little bit Now, I've mostly said my piece about LA Knight recently in my recent retrospective about his up and down run, but 2025 cooled him down so hard. WWE gave him feuds that went nowhere, stop-start pushes, losses with wins that didn't matter, and a frustrating point where he's right on the brink of being world champion, only for them to cut to black before it's his time.
But when it comes down to me and John Cena, my man, what you gotta find out is your time is up, my time.
You see what I mean?
He's still popular, but nowhere near where he should be by this point. I don't hate Jey Uso, but there's little denying that the spot he got should have gone to someone like LA Knight. Another huge failure of WWE's booking this year is El Grande Americano. The gimmick when allegedly Chad Gable was doing it, he's told me it wasn't him though, so. But at first, it was brilliant. Then Chad Gable got hurt and suddenly the gimmick was taken over. It's gone from something that worked and was hilarious to an entirely different being. Ludwig Kaiser is now the man under the mask alongside Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate as Rio and Bravo. Three excellent European and British stars completely fumbled to carry on a gimmick that they didn't get over in the first place. It's now a far cry from what it originally was, and it seems like WWE has completely lost the plot. Not to mention, I feel like everybody forgot about the American Maid storyline. When Chad Gable got injured, one of the final things he said to Brutus, Julius, and Ivy was that when he came back, he wanted to see them with gold, and they just haven't progressed that story at all. The Solo Sikoa vs. Jacob Fatu storyline on paper should have been a war. The initial turn at Money in the Bank was a great moment. But instead it became overproduced and convoluted with weak matches and no emotional payoff. Solo's bloodline has grown in its entertainment value since the Fatu feud, but their rivalry left a lot to be desired compared to other bloodline arcs. Oh, and speaking of weird bloodline decisions and booking, JC Mateo? What? Somehow, we're nearly in 2026 and the Judgment Day is still going. Now granted, the faction has its entertaining moments still, but this year has been filled with random tension plots, no real betrayal. It was just every now and again it seemed like Finn was going to take Dom out back, but then he'd calm down, lose on TV as usual, and we'd go back to square one. Funnily enough, it was rumored Balor would have a huge 2025, but I don't think so, pal. They then confusingly had a betrayal tease as Dom worked with Americano Americano, but it again fizzled out for the most part. However, Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez have been a lot more consistent. Raquel has had a real renaissance in her in-ring work this year, and Roxanne is the prodigy who has scored some big wins over notable names. JD McDonough has had a bit of a slept-on year, and Dirty Dom's 2025 picked up in the latter half after a lot of terrible booking trying to cool him off after WrestleMania. But overall, I say again, it's nearly 2026 and the Judgment Day is still going. Next year, it's about time to put this near 4-year faction to bed and let everyone do something else.
And as I've joked about in the past, if Chris Jericho comes back, makes them his faction, makes them his Painmakers or the Learning Tree again, and they go for another year, good luck, Charlie.
Brock Lesnar was a big shocking return for what exactly? He hasn't elevated anyone, he got an initial pop and then nobody really cared. He beat Cena in a very one-dimensional angle that went nowhere and wasted one of his final matches, and he came back amidst huge controversy and hasn't helped build anything or anyone. Even as of late, WWE continues to make bad booking decisions, like allowing the Lucha Bros to reunite in AAA instead of WWE. Rey Fenix and Penta getting back together is a moment that the people deserved on TV. You've been keeping them separate this whole time as they build up their own solo WWE careers, just to throw the huge tag return all away. A-Town Down Under also broke up this year via social media, which was one of the strangest, most anticlimactic decisions of the year amidst Austin Theory's injury. Grayson Waller has become the background act to another incredibly poor part of the year, The New Day. After their heel turn, The New Day on paper should have had an insane 2025.
I broke my neck! What do you mean? I've been doing my best.
You left us! Yeah, you broke your neck. So what?
A decade, man. A family. Come on, man.
They turned on Big E with nuclear heat on their backs and betrayed him in a heartbreaking moment. Sure, they won at WrestleMania, but it's been the most mundane, skippable heel arc in recent memory. Woods and Cove can still provide entertaining moments on rare occasions, but without Big E to give them their comeuppance, the story felt unfinished and disappointing. If Big E was never going to wrestle again, which I understand, I would have rather them just celebrated 10 years of the New Day and then went their separate ways. An Xavier Woods solo run is something that has been teased before. Why not mix it up by having him try to show that this year?
Advertise stuff. Advertise stuff. Go in a circle.
Now, this deserves its own video because it doesn't directly relate to the booking, although it does feed into their lack of attention to great booking, opting for advertisers and money over a good show. The WWE is littered with ads and brand deals nowadays. Weapons are sponsored, as is the ring mat, the announce table, superstars themselves. Every single aspect of this show is driven for profit rather than entertainment, and that's incredibly depressing. Even down to the WrestleMania debacle, with at least 3 to 4 locations being in line or promised a WrestleMania, but instead WWE opting to announce a Saudi WrestleMania for 2027. Again, money and profit above all. There are probably even more that I could mention, but this covers a lot of WWE's mistakes this year. And with this video, I'm not trying to say the entire year has been terrible, because there's been a lot that I have liked as well.
It's just not the topic of the video, you know, that's not what this is.
But I think overall, the bottom line is 2026 in WWE must be better. It has to be.